Not many people are talking about it right now, but all heck is breaking out in all of these prisons all across the state of New York as we speak. We have a massive strike where all of the prison guards, all of the correctional officers, everyone working in these prisons, they're all on strike right now. So the prisons have basically been left unstaffed. So the prisoners are running the show. They've already taken over multiple prisons, one of which they had to send in some special units to reclaim. We're still waiting on word when it comes to a lot of the other prisons, and some people were worried that there's going to be like massive breakouts and stuff like that. But now the governor of New York, she has declared it an emergency, and she has deployed National Guard. They're literally sending the National Guard in on Black Hawk helicopters to these prisons to try to reclaim the prisons from the prisoners and to bring order back in these prisons, because for the last few days, there have been no guards. And when there are no guards, there are no people working in these prisons. I don't know how a lot of these prisoners are being fed. We already know there's been massive riots in these prisons. They've taken over buildings. They've taken over a whole entire prisons. And the craziest part is the news doesn't really want to talk about it too much because it makes the governor of New York look bad. Well, it is what it is. Because after all, the correctional officers and officials are not on strike for just no reason. They're on strike because of her and new rules, laws, and regulations that she has put in place that correctional officers claim make them unsafe, that put them in more danger. And who am I to tell them otherwise? Me and you can look at these rules and laws and we could say this or we could feel that way. At the end of the day, we're not the one locked up in the prisons with these inmates. So I'm going to take their word for it. If the guards say that, hey, this makes us feel unsafe or this puts us in harm's way and it's not necessary, then I'm going to take their word for it, because I don't want to put myself in their shoes and have to find out for myself, and neither do you all. But yeah, it's crazy right now. Seeing these Black Hawk helicopters landing at these prisons with, National Guard pouring out the helicopters to go into the prisons and kind of try to, I don't want to say necessarily take things over, but to kind of take on the role of these correctional officers. And, nothing against the National Guard at all, but I don't think most of them took this job thinking that they were going to be high security prison guards. And now they are, and I don't know if they're ready for a lot of this. And already we're hearing some kind of, I don't want to call it horror stories, but we're hearing some negative stuff already come out from some of the people who were there. And it's an all-around nasty situation, folks. A National Guard on-site supervisor has stated, "This is much worse than we thought." A National Guard on-site supervisor has stated, "This is much worse than we were told or thought. I am not comfortable leaving my people in here untrained and unprepared. They are making attempts, plans, and calls about pulling out of the facility." So, in many cases, a lot of these National Guardsmen and women, they were not ready for this. You get the call and you go do what you got to do, but you don't necessarily expect to get a call that, hey, we need you guys to, basically take over 40 prisons because the inmates have taken them over, because for the past 4 days, all of the guards have been on strike. So it's putting them in a very, crazy situation that they're not prepared for. And it's not like they're, authorized to use lethal force in, these cases and stuff like that. So it's just, I can't even begin to imagine what some of these National Guard, people are exposed to once they walk into some of these prisons. It's something that I just can't imagine that any of them were really prepared for. And as they've already stated, it's much worse than they thought. They're already talking about trying to pull out of these facilities, and it hasn't even been really 24 hours yet since they entered into these facilities. So that lets you know how bad things are right now. But I want to go ahead and dive into a little bit more information to give everyone a better understanding of what is transpiring here at the moment. Chaos as guards walk out of prisons, leaving military to swoop in on Blackhawks. National Guards members descended upon New York State correctional facilities and Blackhawks as prison guards went on the fourth day of strikes. Governor Kathy Hochul signed an executive order on Wednesday declaring a statewide disaster emergency and activated the New York National Guard to keep order while workers strike outside. Guards at all but 2 of New York's 42 prisons appeared to be on strike. Union officials have said that corrections officers are protesting for better pay, heightened searches of prison visitors, and a reversal of recent prison reforms that limit solitary confinement. State prison guards union leaders have previously conceded that the strike is illegal and say they did not authorize it. Video captured by NBC showed that the state police arrived at Bear Hill Correctional Facility early Thursday, and members of the New York National Guard arrived via Black Hawk helicopters in the afternoon. Officials said some prison staff have been working several days straight amid the ongoing strike. Hochul says National Guard troops are being deployed Wednesday, but she did not immediately specify where. They've already been deployed and are ready to stabilize the situation, Hochul said, of the National Guard soldiers. I am directing everyone involved in these unlawful strikes to stop these actions immediately. Legal action has already commenced to ensure compliance. National Guard soldiers and Humvees entered the grounds of Attica Correctional Facility, the news recently reported. Later in the day, Hochul's office said in a statement that 3,500 members of the New York National Guard started reporting for duty and will support corrections workers at prisons with tasks including distributing meals and medication to incarcerated individuals, and they will help maintain general order and wellness in the facilities. The New York State Department of Corrections issued a memorandum at the demonstrations on Thursday afternoon calling for a path to restoring the workforce. The document detailed suspending unspecified elements of the HALT Act where circumstances create a significant and unreasonable risk to the safety and security of those in the facilities. The memorandum has also announced the suspension of a controversial 70-30 memorandum issued on February 10th regarding staffing reductions.
Of Attica, that's where the National Guard has now moved in to remedy the staffing situation for the hundreds of officers who are now in hour 72 of striking.
At the same time, a state Supreme Court judge has issued a temporary restraining order citing Taylor law. 2 on your side's Andy Payton was there when the National Guard first moved in, and he joins us now from Attica. Andy?
As you can see, we've got the fire going here. This demonstration still going strong at this point. It certainly dwindled down. At one point today, we saw a few hundred out here, but this marks the second day here in Attica and the third at facilities across New York, and it's now gathered the attention of the state who's responding.
Tonight, the state's response, with truckloads full of National Guardsmen rolling up to Attica Correctional Facility as demonstrations by correctional officers in Attica, Collins, and across the state continue for the third straight day. Officers showing no sign of closing camp and growing in numbers, despite the governor calling these demonstrations unlawful in a violation of Taylor's law that prohibits state employees from striking.
They really don't care anymore.
Retired or active.
This strike isn't about money.
Each officer here today for the same reason.
This is about worker safety, spending time with your family. These guys, they don't get time with their family anymore.
And seem to have the same answer for what it would take to end.
This is going to continue until Governor Hochul decides to do the right thing.
Until something gets changed. There's got to be an answer.
We're talking weeks, months?
Whatever it takes. I mean, it's safety. It comes down to safety.
Roy Haller spent 30 years inside these walls.
I got tired of not being home.
And decided last year he had enough.
I didn't want to do it anymore. I mean, I just want to see my family.
He tells us 24-hour shifts were becoming a consistent expectation and the violence was unbearable.
I was sent pictures today of what happened at Mohawk Correctional Facility. I mean, there was a sergeant who was sliced from ear to ear.
The scar across his head.
That's where he was sliced today. That happened this morning at Mohawk Correctional Facility. That's the stuff that people don't hear every day.
And until they do, Roy and hundreds of others here tell us, regardless of the state's actions, they plan to stay put no matter how long it takes. On your
the chaos, it just truly never ends. And we're hearing, a few updates about some of these facilities. But keep in mind, there are over, I think, roughly 40 facilities that have been affected by this. So when they say, don't worry, guys, the National Guard rolled into this prison today and, they're there to make sure everything's okay. Well, what about the 39 other prisons? So right now, I'm not sure, what's going on at all of these facilities. We know that some have been reclaimed. We know that some have been retaken over from the inmates that took them over after the guards left. And listen, when it comes to the guards, who are on strike, I don't necessarily blame them. I can sympathize with their cause. But at the same time, it's kind of a scary situation, especially if you're someone who lives nearby, because you're like, damn, you just left the prison to the prisoners, and now they could escape and harm other people. So, I mean, it's just as I explained earlier, it's a messy, nasty situation. I understand why people will have certain feelings, on different sides of the situation. But this is something that's got to be nipped in the bud, and it's got to be nipped in the bud fast. Because even if you think about the prisoners, they've been in there for days in some of these facilities, and I gotta imagine they haven't been eating, right? Who's been there to cook the meals and pass out the meals? Who's been handling that? That's something that they have, not talked about. We're getting information about this and information about that, but who's there to give these inmates their medicine if they need it? Who's there to feed them? And I don't even want to imagine what's happening in these prisons if these people haven't eaten for 3 or 4 days. Imagine being the prisoner that has like a bunch of honey buns and the entire prison hasn't eaten for 4 days. You're a dead man walking. So, they're putting people in the prison in danger by doing this too. And I know that's probably, the people in the prison are the last people that you think about here. But yeah, you got to think about them too, because some of them haven't eaten and they're probably, just straight up effing each other up over some snacks in there right now. Just, oh boy, nightmarish to think about. But hopefully they get control of this clusterfuck. I'll let you guys know if I get any updates, because right now they're kind of keeping this on the low. They don't want this blowing up too much. Let me know your thoughts about it, though, down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all very soon in the next one.